SpedTech, the Special Education Information Center, we're funded by TEA to be the special education resource for the state of Texas. We're available to anybody within the state who has questions about special education, resources, services, anything special ed related. We also usually handle questions on 504 and early childhood intervention if we get those types of questions also. Our main focus is for parents, although we'll answer questions from anybody. And so if you have questions about your rights, resources, what guidance TEA has on different topics, you're in a difficult situation with the district and you don't know what your options are, you're more than welcome to call us. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we'll tell you what the rules say, what they don't say, and your options, and then we can provide you resources based on what you think you might like to move forward with. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Basically, it's special education rules and regulations, but I'm going to subtitle it family-friendly version. Basically, we're going to talk about two different documents today that should be available to you, as well as an online resource. We'll start with the Notice of Procedural Safeguards. You should be offered one of these when you first requested special education testing for your child, and you should receive one annually each year at your annual ARD meeting. And then you're also welcome to request a new one from the school district if you feel like you can't find your old one and you need to go back and look at the resources. With the procedural safeguards, it's all the regulations talking about what your rights and responsibilities are within special education. And so if you look at the table of contents here, it covers a wide volume of issues, from what the safeguards are supposed to be, the rights of parents, who qualifies as the parents and defines foster parents and surrogate parents, child find, which is the federal regulation about school districts' responsibility to seek out and test students with suspected disabilities to see if they need special education support within the public school setting. Prior written notices, which is where the school district has to notify you in writing when they're wanting to schedule a meeting, when they're wanting to make changes to the services for your child. Basically, before any important decisions are made, you have to be notified of that and invited to share your input. We'll talk about when consent is required, when we have to have your written permission to do testing, to do a variety of things before special education services can start, before they can end, before certain kinds of changes are made. We'll talk about how discipline works with special education children, what protections are in place, what responsibilities they're still obligated to follow. There's a section on private school students where there is potential for certain special education services to be provided to students who attend private school. Transfer of parental rights. Under the regulations, when a child turns 18, they're considered the adult, and all the rights in making decisions on their education fall to them. But there are exceptions to that that the regulations will go through. There's a whole section on resolving disagreements with the school district, which can include IP facilitation, where somebody from TEA comes out to help manage the meeting. They don't give input, but they help manage the meeting and keep it on track. Mediation services, where you negotiate with the district for something that you want that is not currently being provided. Complaint process, where you feel like the regulations have been violated and you want TEA to investigate and determine if they have, and what consequences, if true, are going to be provided. Due process hearings. And then it's also going to have contact information both with the school district, with the educational service center in your area, as well as we're also listed on that as a resource for any questions. Okay, now this was a quick overview. The procedural safeguards are primarily written by attorneys, so sometimes they're not the easiest for parents to understand. So TEA has also produced Parents' Guide to the ARD process, which basically carries the same information, but it's written in a much more family-friendly way in terms of understanding and has additional information in it. And this is also available to you from the school district. In that particular area, it goes from an introduction for special education, early childhood intervention, the services that are available for children with disabilities from birth through up to the third birthday. What help is available within the school setting, making referrals for special education. Parents have that right, as well as the school district can recommend it. Again, the prior written notice, parent consent, what the procedures are in evaluation and how that works. The ARD committee meetings, kind of what to expect, what it takes to actually qualify for special education services. There's basically 2 points. One, the child has to be diagnosed with a disability that falls within the special education services. And there has to be a need for specially designed instruction, something above and beyond of what they could get from the general education teacher. And so then it goes into the individual details that happen into the ARD, the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, basically based on data and observations, is what are the child's strengths, what are their weaknesses in all the academic areas, but as well as health, speech, behavior, et cetera. And those weaknesses are what need to be serviced through special education. The annual goals, writing specific things that are going to happen when teaching certain parts of the curriculum where the child has weaknesses. And so it's very structured and outlined as to what's going to be provided, how it's going to be done, and how progress is going to be measured. Because without measuring progress, you don't know if what's happening is actually working. And so the whole point is for the child to be able to make progress. So everything that's done in special ed has to be documented so we can see over time, are we actually making a difference? We get into special education related services and supplementary aids, talks about all the services that can be provided, like speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, transportation through the special ed can be provided through special education. And those decisions are made during the ARD committee, in which the parent is a very important part of that meeting. State assessments and how that works with children with disabilities. Transition, which in terms of the regulations, basically starts towards the middle school and the high school level of what's the child going to do after they graduate. And so based on what they think they want to do, what do they need? What kind of classes do they need to have? What kind of vocational skills do they need to have? So that all that can be built into what they're learning before they graduate. And then what happens when the child turns 18 and the transition to the student being the adult and making their own decisions. And then it provides specific information on autism, deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, behavior plans, summer school services called extended year services in special education, how placement's decided of what types of services the child needs, how much in special ed, how much in gen ed. The decisions reached at the end and what happens if the parent disagrees, what are the next steps and what are the parents' options for moving forward. Reevaluation, every 3 years under the regulations, special education students have to be retested to see if they re-qualify for special education services. Parents' right to ask for independent evaluation at school district expense if they disagree with the district's evaluation. Parents' right to always revoke consent for special ed and move your child out of special ed back into general education. And then information on graduation, discipline, and again, dispute resolution issues. This one is very parent-friendly. And then the website I want you to be aware of is the legal framework. If you just Google the legal framework in your search engine, it'll pull up this website. And then what they've done on this website is they've taken both the federal and the state regulations on special education, but then they have grouped them by topic. And so if you want to know about the rights of private schools children with special education services, there's a link for that. And it tells you all the things that are available and how it works and how to move through that. These are some of the topics that you can find in the legal framework. There's way more than this that's available. But you can find out about getting your child tested, about dyslexia services, referring for education, early childhood education, and what services are available, transfer evaluations, more discipline. Basically, like I said, everything is grouped together, and so you can actually see what the law says and what is being required of the school district to provide. And so, and then also on the legal framework on that main front page, which is what this is what you'll see when you pull up the website. And then down below on the lower right-hand corner, you'll find links to the procedural safeguards and the ARD guides both. There's also the commissioner's rules, but you're more than welcome to look at it, but it's a side-by-side between the state and the federal regulations, and it's about 350 pages long. So the framework is helpful because it helps you search for exactly what you're wanting for and finding everything in one place. Now, okay, I've gone through that kind of fast because all of this, a lot has to do with each person's situation is different, which is basically kind of why we're set up, is that for individual issues going on with your child, you're welcome to call us. We can listen to you. We can tell you what the rules say. We can send you copies of them if you need it. And we can tell you which options are available to move forward from where you are. And we can send you the resources on that. But currently, because it changes from year to year and time of year, the three main areas where we're getting most of our questions are on the ARD process, questions about the ARD meetings, rules and regulations, and then dispute resolution. And under the ARD process, the top three we're getting right now are homebound services. If you don't know what that is, that's where a doctor has determined that the child's too ill to actually be able to attend school for 4 weeks or more during the entire school year. And if the ARD committee decides that those homebound services are appropriate, the special education teacher comes out to the home several times a week to provide direct instruction to the child. We always get lots of questions on discipline issues of how the student code of conduct and all the discipline rules affect special education children. And the bottom line is special ed students still have to follow the student code of conduct. However, if a serious breach of the codes of conduct happens, there are some protections in place where before a school district can say, okay, we're going to move your child out of the school to a disciplinary campus. There has to be an ARD meeting that has to meet and review, is the violation of the student code of conduct, is that related to what the disability is? Did the disability cause this? Or did this happen because the school wasn't actually providing the services as outlined in the ARD paperwork? And if either of those are going on, then the student has protections from being sent off to another campus. If there's not a linkage to either one of those, then the child can still be disciplined as any other student, but at least there's a stopgap measure for special education trained people, as well as the parent, to look at and review. Would this actually make any difference in moving the child? Because if it's linked to the behavior, it's something that we haven't taught them yet on how to control. Under rules and regulations, we get questions about student transfers, what happens when a special education student transfers to another school district or even out of the state. And so we can cover the very specific rules on how that's supposed to work, the timing of it, and also offer options to the parents to help make this transfer process easier for them and for their child. Questions on special education testing. What happens when you request it? What are the timelines? How long does it take? What if I disagree with the testing? What rights do I have? And then graduation options. With special education, students have some choices in terms of how many credits they need to have for graduation. And there's also different ways of fulfilling the graduation requirements for special education students than there are for the general education students. So we get lots of questions about graduation, probably starting in about another month or so each year. And then lastly, we get lots of questions on dispute resolution. And so that can include IEP implementation. Based on the child's lack of progress, the parent doesn't think the school is actually providing what's written in the ARD paperwork. And so that can be something that a parent can file a complaint with TEA about, or there are other options to try to get that worked out. How to file a complaint, or if you need an advocate. If you feel like you're ganged up on during ARD meetings or you're not understanding the terminology, TEA doesn't provide advocates, but you have the right to invite one to come to the meeting with you, to help explain stuff to you, to help ask the questions that maybe you don't know how to ask. And so to help you just navigate through the system with somebody who's working with you side by side. Now, I've been moving through this pretty quickly. What I wanted to do mainly today is to give you options if you want to actually ask questions. I don't necessarily want on your questions for there to be specific information about a child, because I don't want to share your personal information with anybody else who's attending today. But if you want to ask a general question about, well, what if this situation happened? What can be done? I'll be happy to answer that, or any other types of services or supports that we can provide for you.
Right now in the chat, we don't have anything, Doug, so we can see.
Okay.
We can give another.
Now, if you're logged in and you're watching through your Zoom, you might want to look up to the top or right, and you'll see like a microphone. If it has a red line through it, that means your microphone is off. So if you do want to ask a question, click on that, the line will disappear, and you'll be able to speak directly to me.
Okay, here's one. So here's one question. She doesn't feel like the school is giving her the help that she needs. And she's requested some additional testing and still gotten nothing. How could you share with her like how she might want to word that?
Okay. If your child is already in special education and you want some additional testing, you will need to request that during an ARD meeting. The ARD has to decide on additional testing that needs to be done, but you're a member of that committee. So you have the right to request an ARD meeting to bring that up and have that discussed. And if you're wanting a repeat of testing, that can be done, not more than one calendar year, but if it's been more than a year since your child was tested, you can ask for new testing. You can ask for testing in new areas if you want. Now, to give you another little step in there, parents always have the right to request an ARD meeting, but my suggestion is you make that request in writing If you put it in writing and send it to the campus principal, under the regulations, they have to get back to you within 5 school days to either talk about when to schedule the meeting, or they can send you a written notice of refusing to have the meeting, but they have to give you reasons to do that. And if they do refuse, you can challenge that, but with a TEA complaint. But you may also want to ask about the progress monitoring. Depending on what is happening that makes you think that your child is not doing well. Is it based on grades? Is it based on the school saying the child can do this, but when you're helping them with homework, it's not happening? There's lots of ways that can happen, but I would definitely bring it up during our meeting, request additional testing if you want, but you're right. And usually, unless testing in that area has been done within the last year, they might say no, but if it's been more than a year, then there shouldn't be any reason why the testing shouldn't be honored. But you will end up having to sign another consent before that testing can start.
Okay, Doug, we have quite a few questions about evaluation.
Okay.
One of our participants says that her friend homeschools her children, and she believes one of her children is dyslexic. So how would she start that evaluation process?
Okay. Even for private school and homeschool children, you can contact the local special education department at your local school district and ask for well, it can be called a child find evaluation. Basically, that's just the district is required to test any student with a suspected disability, whether they're homeschooled in a private school or within the school district. So call the special education department, tell them you want testing for your child who's being homeschooled, and they'll take some information from you, then as well as contact information and what your concerns are. Then they'll check with their assessment team, and then they'll contact you back with a time and a place to get the testing started. And then usually on the day you show up for the testing, they'll have you sign the consent so they have written permission. They'll do the testing, they'll write the report, and then after the report is done, they'll schedule a meeting with you to review the results. If your child qualifies for services, they'll offer services at that point, and you can accept or reject. That is up to you.
All right, Doug, another one that goes back to that progress monitoring. So
Mhm.
how often should parents receive updates on child's progress? And is the homeroom teacher responsible for updates?
Okay. Usually for a special education child, one of the special education teachers has been assigned as their case manager. And so that is typically the person who would be keeping track of all that data. So that would be the person that you'd want to ask for copies of whatever data and forms that they've kept data information on. So unless the homeroom teacher is also a special education teacher, it may not be the homeroom teacher. Now on progress monitoring, there is a section in the ARD paperwork where it actually has a section where it says how frequently the school district will provide progress monitoring data. At a minimum, they're required to provide it every time they send out a report card. However, you have the right to ask for progress monitoring data to be provided to you more frequently. You just need to speak up with at what level. Do you want it on a monthly level? Do you want it every month? Do you want it every 6 weeks? You basically just need to express what your wishes are so that can be written into the paperwork so that they know how frequently they need to send you that data.
And then we had another question, and I think it came up earlier. Can a request be made to the special education coordinator instead of the principal? And I think that's in reference to requesting an ARD meeting.
Well, ultimately, the principal is responsible for whatever happens on their campus. However, sometimes districts assign duties to other people. So in those cases, my suggestion would be send it as an email and copy both the principal and the special ed coordinator. So the two people who might be involved in that are both notified. And between the two of them, you should get what you're asking for.
And would that be the case for evaluation as well?
Yeah, now, if it's for the first time evaluation, then yes, either one of those are totally acceptable to make that request. If it's for a new evaluation or a reevaluation when the child's already in special education, then you can still notify them both, but it's going to be asking for an ARD meeting, the purpose of which is to request additional testing.
And then we got another one about with a child being in 504, should she be getting one-on-one help? Is that a more specific question to the situation, or?
That's general enough. Okay, or lack of a better term, I consider 504 and special ed kissing cousins. They both provide services for children with disabilities, but at a much different level. With 504, the student is basically on grade level, but they just need accommodations in the way materials are presented to them or extra time or things like that. And so typically one-on-one type support is not what is available through 504. In those cases, you may, even if the child's in 504, if you think they need more help than they're getting, then you have the right to go ahead and request special education testing from the school. Again, writing that email to the special ed coordinator or to the principal, and let them do the full evaluation, which is more in depth than what the 504 evaluation is. And if they do qualify for special education services, then potentially, if the ARD committee agrees, one-on-one assistance can be provided from special education staff.
And then earlier you mentioned the progress monitoring data. One of the parents is reporting they've never received this. Is there a formal report of this?
They can be put together, but they'd have to have different sections. Basically, the report card gives you the grades for the class. The progress monitoring data should be telling you what kind of progress the child is making on the IEP goals in the different areas for which they've been developed. And so if you're only getting one report, the only way it could be encompassing both is if there's a section of just grades, and then there's another section telling you the amount of progress your child is making on the goals, which are different than the grades. So I hope that's making sense. If not, please send a question back.
No, I think that makes sense. And I think a lot of times that progress is sent along with the report card. I know in the districts that I've worked with and worked in, that has been the practice.
Yeah,
So,
usually there's two separate forms that are sent, but they're totally different. And so you want to make sure that you're getting both of them.
yes. All right, Doug, that is all of the questions that we have. And wow, we wrapped that up really well. So I think the next one, we have the sped text information on the next slide.
Let me go ahead and.
Your timing was impeccable, Doug.
Okay. Basically, I encourage all of y'all to write down this information. Spedtext.org is our website. We have an entire section there just for parents with information, if you want to search on your own. And then our phone number is there. And we're available 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, year round. And so you're welcome to call us, tell us what's going on, or concerns or questions that you have, and we'll be more than happy to help you with your answers. All of us are well experienced in special ed, and most of us here are former special education directors. So